It was a bright and lively Saturday afternoon. The small community hall was buzzing with laughter, chatter, and the clinking of glasses. People were dressed neatly, greeting each other with warm smiles. Children ran around with innocent joy, and the air was filled with the aroma of freshly baked snacks. In the middle of all this, a couple walked together hand in hand. They seemed happy on the surface, sharing polite smiles with familiar faces. The wife had spent hours getting ready, carefully choosing her outfit, making sure every detail was perfect. She wanted to feel confident and comfortable. Her husband, on the other hand, seemed more focused on showing off. He laughed loudly, moved around the crowd confidently, and made jokes that drew attention to himself. At first, everything seemed normal. They greeted friends, exchanged pleasantries, and enjoyed the atmosphere. But as the afternoon went on, subtle tension began to build. The husband, in front of a group of acquaintances, made a comment about the way she had handled a small household issue. His tone was casual, almost joking, but there was a sharpness to it that made the wife's stomach twist. She froze for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. The room felt suddenly warmer, and the laughter around her seemed distant. She could hear people whispering, some glancing toward her with curiosity or concern. Her face flushed with embarrassment and her mind raced. Was she imagining the sting in his words? No, she could feel it clearly. The husband, noticing her discomfort, smirked slightly. He didn't stop, instead continuing his commentary, turning a small incident from their personal life into a source of humor for the group. He spoke loudly enough for everyone around to hear, emphasizing her mistake and exaggerating it for effect. The wife's heart sank. She had never felt so exposed, so vulnerable in a room full of people she knew. Despite the humiliation, she maintained a composed exterior. Her hands were steady, and she managed a polite smile, though it felt forced. Internally, however, she was a storm of emotions: shock, anger, hurt, and disbelief. She could feel the eyes of friends and neighbors on her, some sympathetic, some curious, some silently judging. She wanted to disappear, to retreat into a corner where no one could see her distress. A close friend noticed the situation and quietly approached her. They whispered a few comforting words, offering support without drawing more attention. The wife nodded, grateful for the gesture, but she knew she had to navigate the situation herself. The husband continued, oblivious or perhaps intentionally ignoring the growing discomfort around him. Each word he spoke seemed to chip away at her confidence, and yet, somewhere deep inside, she felt a small spark of determination. She refused to let this define her. The rest of the gathering became a blur. Conversations felt distant, and she moved through the crowd with careful steps, greeting people politely but keeping her distance from her husband. She noticed the subtle shifts in people's expressions. Some were clearly uncomfortable, others exchanged quiet glances, and a few seemed unsure of how to react. It was a delicate balance of social dynamics, and she felt trapped in the middle. She found a quiet spot near the refreshment table, taking a moment to breathe and collect herself. The taste of the warm tea did little to calm the whirlwind inside her. Her mind replayed the moment over and over, analyzing every word, every laugh, every glance. She realized that this wasn't just a casual joke. It was a deliberate act that put her in a vulnerable position. The embarrassment was public, the humiliation sharp, and the social pressure immediate. As she stood there, she noticed a young woman struggling with a tray of snacks nearby. Without thinking, she moved forward and helped her steady the tray, offering a kind smile. The small act of kindness gave her a momentary sense of control, a reminder that she could still influence the environment around her. Even in the midst of her own discomfort, she could act with grace. The husband, sensing that the attention was drifting, tried to regain the spotlight by telling another story, this time about a minor mishap at a local event. Again, he made her the focus, highlighting her part in a humorous but demeaning way. Laughter erupted, some genuine, some polite, and the wife felt the sting of each chuckle. She felt isolated, a mixture of shame and frustration washing over her. But she didn't react outwardly. She stayed composed even as the words struck deep. Throughout the event, she observed people's reactions carefully. She noticed the subtle support from some friends, the uncomfortable shuffling from others, and the way the children seemed oblivious to the adult tensions. She realized that humiliation, while painful, was temporary, and that the perception others had of her could be influenced by how she responded. This thought gave her a quiet sense of strength. By the end of the gathering, she had decided that she would not let this incident define her. The husband may have thought he had control in that moment, but she understood that real strength was in how she handled herself after the fact. The humiliation was public, yes, but her response could be private, thoughtful, and deliberate. As they left the hall, she walked with her head held high, a calm exterior masking the storm inside. She knew there would be time to reflect, to plan, and to respond in a way that would reclaim her dignity. The small spark of determination that had flickered during the event was now growing, fueling her resolve. She understood that the story was not over, and that the next step she took would define her true strength and intelligence. That night, she sat by the window looking out at the quiet streets, replaying the events in her mind. She acknowledged the pain, the embarrassment, and the anger, but she also recognized the opportunity. The public humiliation had been unexpected and harsh, but it had also revealed her inner resilience. She realized that she could respond not with anger, but with grace, and that this approach would ultimately have a greater impact than any immediate confrontation. In those quiet moments, she made a silent promise to herself. She would turn this situation around. She would not let the humiliation linger in the minds of others. Instead, she would demonstrate her intelligence, her strength, and her dignity in the days to come. The first part of her journey had begun, and it would shape the way she moved forward, not as someone who was embarrassed or defeated, but as someone who had chosen to rise above it with calm determination and thoughtful strategy. The morning after the event, the wife woke up with a mix of emotions swirling inside her. The embarrassment of the previous day was still fresh, and the replay of her husband's words ran through her mind repeatedly. Each time she thought about it, the sting seemed to sharpen. She had felt small and exposed, even though she had stayed composed in front of everyone. Lying in bed, she allowed herself to feel the hurt fully, acknowledging that it was natural to be upset, but she also knew that dwelling in despair would not help her move forward. After a long moment of reflection, she decided to take a walk in the quiet morning air. The streets were calm, with sunlight spilling gently over the trees and houses. The gentle breeze and the distant chirping of birds offered a small sense of peace. As she walked, she tried to untangle her thoughts and understand her emotions. She knew she had two choices: either let the humiliation define her or use it as a turning point. She recalled how her husband's words had aimed to diminish her in front of others. The idea made her blood boil for a moment, but she reminded herself that reacting in anger would only feed the situation. She wanted to respond thoughtfully, with intelligence and dignity rather than letting emotions dictate her actions. Her mind began to formulate a plan, not for revenge but for reclaiming her strength and demonstrating her worth in a calm and subtle way. Later, she met a close friend at a small cafe. The friend had always been a source of encouragement and understanding. As soon as they sat down, she shared what had happened, describing the public humiliation in detail. Her friend listened attentively, nodding with empathy without interrupting. After she finished, her friend offered a gentle but firm perspective. She reminded the wife that her worth was not tied to one person's judgment or the fleeting opinions of a crowd. She emphasized that real strength came from composure, grace, and intelligence, and that her response could reshape how others perceived the incident. The wife absorbed these words, feeling a sense of clarity begin to form. She realized that she had control over her actions and over the way she presented herself to the world. She could let this event define her, or she could redefine the narrative herself. She felt a spark of determination. She would not allow humiliation to linger in the minds of others. Instead, she would transform it into an opportunity to display her strength and wisdom. Over the next few days, she focused on small steps that would build her confidence. She revisited areas in her life where she had felt uncertain and quietly worked to improve them. At home, she organized her space and completed tasks that she had postponed, each small accomplishment reinforcing her sense of control. She also reflected on her personal and professional goals, making notes and plans in a journal. Writing down her thoughts helped her process emotions and strategize for the future. During this time, she observed her interactions with her husband carefully. She noticed patterns in his behavior, moments when he tried to assert dominance, when he made jokes at her expense, or when he sought attention. Instead of reacting immediately, she studied his tendencies, learning when to speak and when to remain calm. This observation was not about manipulation. It was about understanding dynamics so she could navigate them with poise. One afternoon, she received an invitation to a community meeting where several people from the gathering would also attend. The thought of attending stirred a mixture of anxiety and resolve within her. She knew this could be an opportunity to assert her dignity without confrontation. She began planning carefully. She considered how to present herself, what topics she could contribute to confidently, and how to handle any potential comments from her husband without losing composure. On the day of the meeting, she dressed in a simple yet elegant manner, choosing an outfit that made her feel confident. As she walked into the room, she carried herself with quiet strength, a calm determination visible in her posture. People greeted her warmly, and she responded with gentle smiles, maintaining a composed and approachable demeanor. Her husband, noticing the attention she received, seemed slightly unsettled, but he continued his usual display of boisterous confidence, unaware that the perception was beginning to shift. During the discussions, she contributed thoughtfully, offering insights and suggestions that demonstrated her competence and intelligence. Her points were well received, and people nodded appreciatively. Even those who had witnessed the previous public humiliation could not help but notice the calm, composed, and knowledgeable way she handled herself. The contrast between her husband's loud attempts at humor and her quiet effectiveness was becoming increasingly apparent to observers. After the meeting, she noticed subtle changes in social dynamics. Friends who had been uncomfortable during the previous event now engaged with her more openly, some exchanging smiles of encouragement. Her presence commanded respect not through force but through calm confidence and intelligent contributions. Even her husband seemed to sense that the social balance had shifted, though he did not fully understand why. That evening, back at home, she reflected on the day's events. She felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that she had handled herself with grace. The humiliation from before had not disappeared, but its power over her was weakening. She realized that by choosing thoughtful action over reactive emotion, she was reclaiming her sense of self. Each moment of composure and each intelligent contribution reinforced her inner strength. In the following days, she continued to build on this foundation. She reached out to friends and acquaintances, sharing ideas and participating in discussions, not in a competitive way, but in a manner that showcased her skills and perspective. Slowly, the narrative around her began to change. People who had witnessed the humiliation were now seeing her in a new light, capable, intelligent, and composed. The power dynamic that had been so damaging was subtly shifting in her favor. Throughout this time, she remained aware of her husband's reactions. Occasionally, he would attempt to assert his usual dominance or make a sarcastic remark, but she met it with calm acknowledgement rather than confrontation. Her restraint spoke louder than words. By not giving him the reaction he sought, she subtly undermined the control he had tried to exert in the past. The wife also focused on personal growth. She enrolled in a short course related to her interests, engaged in reading that expanded her knowledge, and practiced mindfulness exercises to strengthen her emotional resilience. These efforts were not meant to prove anything to anyone but herself. Yet they had the added effect of increasing her confidence in social and professional settings, further reinforcing the shift in perception among her peers. One evening, she shared her reflections with her friend over coffee. She spoke about the initial humiliation, her feelings of hurt, and the steps she had taken to respond with dignity. Her friend smiled, noting how much she had grown in a short time. The wife felt a sense of pride, not arrogance, but quiet acknowledgement of her resilience and intelligence. She knew that the journey was not over, but she had taken the crucial first steps toward reclaiming her dignity and social standing. By the end of part 2 of her journey, she had moved from shock and embarrassment to careful reflection and strategic action. She had learned the importance of composure, observation, and thoughtful response. The public humiliation that had once seemed like a defining moment had now become an opportunity for personal growth and empowerment. She understood that grace and intelligence could transform even the most painful experiences into lessons of strength and resilience. Weeks had passed since the public humiliation, and the wife had been quietly building her strength and confidence. Each day she moved through her life with greater awareness, carefully observing her surroundings and the people around her. She had become attuned to subtle social cues, noticing gestures, expressions, and tones that revealed the dynamics in the room. This awareness gave her a sense of control and clarity she had never felt before. One afternoon, she received an invitation to attend a workshop organized by her community. It was an opportunity for learning and networking, and she saw it as a chance to further demonstrate her competence without any pretense. She prepared thoroughly, researching the topics to be discussed and considering questions she could ask that would show her knowledge and thoughtfulness. Her goal was simple: to participate fully and confidently, without drawing unnecessary attention, but in a way that others could not ignore her presence. The day of the workshop arrived, and the atmosphere was filled with anticipation and curiosity. People chatted in small groups, introducing themselves and sharing their experiences. She walked in with calm assurance, greeting familiar faces with polite smiles. Her husband was also present, as he often liked to be involved in social gatherings. He seemed confident, moving around the room easily, joking loudly and drawing attention to himself. She noted his behavior silently, understanding that his attempt to dominate the social space was predictable. As the workshop began, she focused on listening attentively. She made mental notes of the key points and challenges discussed. When the facilitator asked for contributions from the participants, she raised her hand with quiet confidence. Her voice was clear and steady as she shared her insights, offering solutions and ideas that were practical and well thought out. People nodded in agreement, some taking notes, others exchanging glances of approval. She noticed that her husband, who was usually quick to speak first, looked slightly unsettled by the attention she was receiving. Throughout the session, she continued to contribute meaningfully, engaging with others respectfully and thoughtfully. Her approach was collaborative rather than competitive, making her points without overshadowing anyone else. This subtle but powerful display of intelligence and poise began to shift the energy in the room. People who had been unsure or skeptical of her abilities now started to see her as capable and composed. The balance of attention was quietly tilting in her favor, and she felt a sense of satisfaction knowing that she was reclaiming her social presence without confrontation. During a break, a small group gathered near the refreshment table. Some of the attendees who had witnessed the earlier public humiliation approached her, expressing admiration for the way she had handled herself. They shared that they had been impressed by her calmness and her insightful contributions. For the first time since that embarrassing incident, she felt the sting of humiliation begin to fade. The respect and appreciation she was receiving reinforced the understanding that her strength lay in her demeanor and intellect. Her husband, noticing the attention she was receiving, tried to regain his usual dominance. He made a comment intended to belittle her, choosing a tone that hinted at sarcasm. The group fell silent for a moment, and the wife took a deep breath. She met his remark with calm composure, responding with a thoughtful comment that redirected the conversation toward a productive topic. Her response was polite but firm, and it highlighted her intelligence and presence of mind. The group reacted positively, nodding and engaging with her perspective, and the husband was left with little impact from his attempt. As the workshop continued, she remained focused on contributing value. She asked insightful questions, shared relevant experiences, and engaged with the facilitator in meaningful ways. Her actions spoke louder than any words, demonstrating that she could handle social challenges with dignity and effectiveness. By the end of the session, she had not only participated successfully, but had also subtly shifted the perception of those around her. After the workshop, a few attendees approached her to continue discussions. They complimented her ideas and sought her opinion on related topics. The wife engaged with them patiently, offering thoughtful guidance and sharing her knowledge without arrogance. Each interaction reinforced her confidence and highlighted her ability to maintain composure even in situations that could have previously made her feel vulnerable. That evening, she reflected on the events of the day. She realized that her strategy of careful observation, thoughtful preparation, and composed participation was working. The public humiliation that had once seemed overwhelming was no longer controlling her life. Instead, it had become a catalyst for growth, teaching her the value of intelligence, poise, and strategic action. She felt a sense of empowerment that came not from overpowering others, but from mastering her own response and demonstrating competence through action. Over the next few weeks, she continued to build on this momentum. She attended meetings, workshops, and community events, always prepared, always composed. People began to seek her opinion, recognizing her as someone thoughtful, knowledgeable, and capable. The husband's attempts to dominate social interactions became less effective, as he found that his previous tactics no longer garnered the desired attention. The dynamic between them was subtly changing, with her presence commanding quiet respect. She also focused on her personal development outside social settings. She dedicated time to reading, learning new skills, and pursuing interests that brought her satisfaction. These activities strengthened her confidence and gave her a sense of fulfillment that was independent of others' opinions. The combination of personal growth and social awareness created a powerful foundation, allowing her to navigate future challenges with calm and intelligence. As she moved through life, she began to notice that people's perceptions were shifting, not only because of her competence but because of her consistent demeanor. Her composure and thoughtful engagement in various situations created a reputation of reliability and intelligence. The humiliation from the past was slowly being replaced by respect and admiration from those who had witnessed her transformation. One afternoon, she attended a community gathering where she once would have felt anxious and self-conscious. This time she felt calm and confident. She greeted people warmly, engaged in meaningful conversations, and contributed to discussions with insight and clarity. Observers, including those who had witnessed her previous embarrassment, could not help but recognize her grace and intelligence. The contrast between her calm composure and the husband's attempts at attention-seeking behavior highlighted her strength in an unmistakable way. At home, she reflected on the journey so far. The public humiliation had been painful, but it had also been a turning point. She had learned that true strength came from within, from maintaining dignity, and from using intelligence and strategy to navigate difficult situations. She realized that her response could influence not only her own sense of self-worth, but also how others perceived her. This understanding gave her a sense of control and empowerment she had never experienced before. By the end of Part 3, the wife had transformed her initial pain into a source of strength. She had begun to reclaim her dignity, demonstrating that grace, intelligence, and composure could turn even the most challenging situations into opportunities for growth and respect. The foundation was laid for the next stage of her journey, where her ability to influence perceptions and handle complex social dynamics would be further tested and solidified. The wife had been quietly observing the shift in the social environment over the past weeks, and she could feel the subtle changes in the way people interacted with her. Her calm demeanor, intelligence, and thoughtful contributions had begun to redefine her presence in the community. Even those who had once doubted her capabilities were now seeing her in a new light. Her confidence was growing, and she was beginning to understand the true power of dignity and composure. One afternoon, the husband made an attempt to assert his usual dominance during a family gathering. He chose a moment when everyone's attention was on a discussion about local events, and tried to make a sarcastic comment aimed at highlighting a past mistake of the wife. The words were delivered with his typical loud and confident tone, expecting laughter or acknowledgement. The wife felt the familiar tension rise within her but remained outwardly calm. She took a moment to assess the room, noticing the slight hesitation in others' reactions and the subtle glances of discomfort that mirrored what she had felt in the past. Instead of reacting immediately, she responded with a calm, thoughtful comment that addressed the topic at hand, without giving him the reaction he was seeking. Her voice was steady, her words measured, and her presence assured. The group turned their attention back to the discussion, engaging with her perspective and leaving little room for further derision. The husband, momentarily unsettled, tried again to regain attention but found his previous tactics ineffective. His attempts were met with polite acknowledgement or gentle redirection, demonstrating that the wife's composure had shifted the social dynamics in her favor. Over the following days, she reflected on this incident and realized that her strategy of careful observation and controlled response was having a profound impact. She understood that social influence was not about overpowering others, but about consistently demonstrating competence, intelligence, and grace. By maintaining her dignity and calmly asserting her insights, she had subtly but effectively changed the way people perceived her. The wife also began to notice changes in her husband's behavior. He seemed more cautious in his interactions, less inclined to publicly belittle or dominate her. He still attempted occasional sarcastic remarks, but the impact was diminished and the social environment no longer reinforced his behavior. She observed him closely, understanding that while he had not fully changed, the balance of power in their social interactions was evolving. One evening, she attended a community networking event with a small group of friends. The atmosphere was lively, with people exchanging ideas and experiences. She contributed thoughtfully to conversations, offering insights and asking questions that demonstrated her intelligence and understanding. People responded positively, seeking her opinion and valuing her perspective. The subtle shift in perception that had begun weeks earlier was now becoming more pronounced. The respect and recognition she received were a direct result of her consistent, composed behavior. During the event, the husband attempted a mild joke aimed at drawing attention to her past mistakes. This time she handled it effortlessly. She responded with a light, non-confrontational remark that deflected the comment while subtly reinforcing her intelligence. The group laughed politely, not at her expense, and the focus of attention returned to the discussion. The husband's attempt to humiliate her publicly had backfired, highlighting her ability to navigate social challenges with grace and intelligence. The wife also began mentoring a few young women in the community, sharing her experiences and offering guidance. She emphasized the importance of composure, self-respect, and thoughtful response in difficult situations. Her mentorship was received warmly, and she gained a reputation as someone not only capable but also supportive and wise. This role reinforced her confidence and allowed her to further influence the social environment positively. At home, she continued to focus on personal growth and reflection. She maintained a journal where she recorded her observations, thoughts, and strategies for handling challenging situations. This practice helped her analyze events objectively and develop a deeper understanding of human behavior and social dynamics. She also dedicated time to learning new skills and exploring interests that brought her satisfaction and personal fulfillment. The husband, observing her growing influence and confidence, began to reflect on his own behavior. He noticed that his previous attempts to assert dominance were no longer effective, and that the social environment had shifted subtly against him. While he had not yet fully acknowledged the impact of his actions, the realization of their diminishing effect created a sense of unease. The wife's calm and composed responses had demonstrated a power that did not rely on aggression or loudness, and he could not ignore it. One weekend, the couple attended a family gathering where several relatives and friends were present. The wife moved through the event with ease, engaging in conversations and contributing to discussions with insight and warmth. Her husband made a small attempt at humor directed at her, but she handled it gracefully, responding with a thoughtful comment that redirected attention to a productive topic. Observers, including relatives who had witnessed previous incidents of humiliation, noticed the shift. The wife's intelligence, composure, and grace were now evident to everyone in the room. After the gathering, she reflected on the progress she had made. The journey from public humiliation to personal empowerment had been challenging, requiring patience, strategic thinking, and emotional resilience. She recognized that her strength lay not in confrontation or retaliation, but in consistent, thoughtful actions that demonstrated her worth and character. The social perception of her had transformed, and she felt a sense of accomplishment and empowerment that was deeply satisfying. In the days that followed, she continued to build on this foundation. She attended meetings, participated in community activities, and engaged with friends and acquaintances in ways that reinforced her dignity and intelligence. Each interaction further solidified her reputation as someone capable, composed, and respected. The initial humiliation that had once seemed overwhelming had now become a catalyst for growth and empowerment. At home, the wife and her husband had several private conversations. She addressed past incidents calmly and thoughtfully, expressing her feelings and observations without anger or blame. The husband listened, and while he did not fully express understanding or change, he was forced to confront the impact of his actions. The dynamic between them continued to evolve, with her consistent composure and intelligence shaping the nature of their interactions. By the end of Part 4, the wife had successfully turned the situation around. The public humiliation that had once threatened her dignity was no longer a defining moment. Through patience, observation, and thoughtful action, she had reclaimed her respect and influenced the social environment positively. Her ability to maintain grace under pressure had created a foundation of empowerment that would continue to guide her in future challenges. The stage was now set for the final part of her journey, where the full impact of her intelligence, composure, and strategic action would become even more evident, solidifying her personal growth and social influence. The weeks and months after the public humiliation had been transformative for the wife. Each day she continued to grow stronger, more confident, and more aware of her own value. She had learned that dignity and intelligence could shape not only her self-perception, but also the perception others had of her. The journey that began with embarrassment had now turned into a path of empowerment and resilience. One morning, she received an invitation to a local charity event. The event promised to be large, with many influential members of the community attending. This was the perfect opportunity for her to demonstrate everything she had learned since the incident that had once humiliated her. She prepared carefully, choosing a simple yet elegant outfit that reflected her personality. She thought about how she would contribute to conversations and what topics would highlight her knowledge, thoughtfulness, and calm presence. As she arrived at the venue, the atmosphere was lively. People moved about, chatting, exchanging ideas, and forming small groups. She greeted familiar faces with warmth and engaged in polite conversation, maintaining a calm and approachable demeanor. Her husband was also present, as he often attended such events, but his usual confident swagger seemed slightly subdued. Perhaps he sensed the shift in attention and influence that she had been cultivating over the past months. During the event, a group discussion began on the challenges facing their community. The wife listened carefully, taking note of the points raised and considering her response. When she spoke, her voice was calm and measured, her ideas clear and practical. She suggested solutions, shared experiences, and asked thoughtful questions that encouraged collaboration. People responded positively, nodding, smiling, and engaging with her points. The husband attempted to interject with his usual humor and remarks, but they fell flat in comparison to her composed and insightful contributions. It was in this moment that she fully realized how far she had come. The humiliation that had once made her feel small now seemed distant, almost irrelevant. Her ability to respond with intelligence, composure, and grace had shifted the social balance. She felt a deep sense of empowerment, understanding that her strength lay not in being louder or more aggressive, but in being thoughtful, calm, and capable. Throughout the event, she continued to engage with others respectfully and thoughtfully. People who had witnessed the earlier public humiliation approached her, expressing admiration for how she had handled herself and the growth they had observed. They sought her opinion, valued her perspective, and even shared their own experiences of overcoming challenges. The respect she was receiving was genuine, earned through consistent behavior, intelligence, and composure. Her husband, observing the admiration and attention she was receiving, seemed to recognize the shift. He made a few attempts at humor and attention-seeking comments, but they no longer had the effect they once did. His behavior was increasingly met with polite acknowledgement or gentle redirection, demonstrating that her composed responses had effectively neutralized his attempts at dominance. She remained calm, never needing to confront or criticize him openly, allowing her dignity and intelligence to speak for themselves. After the formal part of the event, a smaller gathering of attendees formed. They discussed plans for future community projects and sought her input on organizing and leading initiatives. The wife contributed confidently, sharing her ideas with clarity and practical insight. People responded with enthusiasm, expressing interest in collaborating with her. This interaction further reinforced her sense of empowerment, showing that she could influence her environment positively without resorting to aggression or confrontation. At home, she reflected on the journey she had been through. From the shock and humiliation of the public incident to the careful planning, personal growth, and strategic social engagement, she had transformed her experience into a source of strength. The lessons she had learned about composure, observation, and thoughtful response had not only helped her reclaim dignity, but had also provided tools for navigating future challenges. She also began to mentor others who faced difficult social situations, sharing her experience and insights. She emphasized the importance of staying calm, thinking strategically, and responding with intelligence and dignity. Her guidance was received with gratitude and respect, and she found fulfillment in helping others navigate challenges she had once faced herself. Through this mentorship, she reinforced her own growth and influence, further solidifying the transformation that had begun months earlier. The relationship with her husband continued to evolve. While he had not fully changed, he began to recognize the impact of his actions and the respect she commanded. He occasionally expressed remorse or attempted to adjust his behavior, and she responded with calm acknowledgement and measured guidance. The dynamic between them became more balanced, rooted in mutual respect rather than dominance and humiliation. She realized that she had not only reclaimed her own dignity, but had also created an environment that encouraged reflection and positive change. Over time, she noticed that her social influence had grown beyond her immediate circle. Community members sought her advice, valued her perspective, and included her in important discussions. The respect she had cultivated was genuine and enduring, built on consistent behavior, intelligence, and grace under pressure. The humiliation that had once threatened her confidence had become a distant memory, replaced by admiration, respect, and empowerment. The wife continued to pursue personal growth, engaging in learning opportunities, exploring new skills, and dedicating time to reflection. She maintained a journal where she recorded her observations, strategies, and insights. This practice helped her maintain clarity, track her progress, and reinforce the lessons she had learned. She understood that empowerment was an ongoing journey, requiring vigilance, self-awareness, and thoughtful action. In the final reflection of her journey, she recognized the full impact of her experience. The public humiliation had been painful, but it had served as a catalyst for transformation. Through patience, strategic thinking, composure, and intelligence, she had not only reclaimed her dignity, but had also reshaped social dynamics, earned genuine respect, and created opportunities for personal and communal growth. Her journey demonstrated that true strength lies in grace under pressure, thoughtful action, and the consistent demonstration of competence and dignity. By the end of Part 5, the wife had fully turned the situation around. The public humiliation that had once threatened to define her now served as a story of empowerment and resilience. She had shown that intelligence, composure, and dignity could transform even the most challenging experiences into opportunities for growth, respect, and influence. Her journey concluded not with revenge or confrontation, but with the quiet, undeniable power of grace, strength, and thoughtful action. The lessons she had learned would continue to guide her throughout her life, serving as a reminder that true empowerment comes from within and is expressed through consistent, intelligent, and dignified action.